I found with entrepreneurship and business, and this happened with a lot of spots in my life, is if we're like putting our head down and doing the right things and grinding ourselves, opportunities come and we just need to recognize them.
Hey, what's happening? You know it. We all know it. 2023 is almost gone. Poof. 2024 is coming around the corner, but we still have Q4 to make the most of it. So that's why the new HubSpot Sales Hub is here to help you and your team. And it's pretty epic. So this thing helps you along the whole customer journey. It ties everybody on your team together, your workflows, your operations, making sure no one's missing anything so you can deliver a better experience, a thing to your customers, but also get more revenue for your business. Let's close out the year strong. This is going to help you do it. So they also have a new conversational AI-powered platform called ChatSpot. This thing is going to help you basically be your assistant to craft emails, different copy that you want to write, outline posts, and so many other ways and things that would take up hours of your time. Well, times have changed. You don't have to do that anymore. This thing also has 1,400 integrations, which I'm sure it's going to work in your business. So tons of features, ways to get creative in how to use this. So right now, at the end of this year, we want to make sure that you're making the most of it. So go make the switch to HubSpot Sales Hub over at hubspot.com/sales. All right, Dallas, we're rolling, man. It's cool to have you here and stoked to dive in on all this stuff you've been doing. You've been doing some impressive things in real estate, coaching, I know adventuring, having a family as well too. So you're busy, dude. How you doing today?
Very, very busy, but trying to get the most out of life as I can. You know, it's too short.
Right? It's true, man. And the world's crazy. So you might as well make the most of it and do what you can and have fun, hopefully, on the process too, not burn yourself out. It's kind of the ethos of this show anyway. Yeah, man. So, when we were introduced together, and when I started diving into your whole story, I was just like, okay, but by like 28, I think it was, right? 28 years old, you've already created this thriving real estate business that's spitting out cash flow. I think it was over 100,000 a year, which just cash flow alone is like, what? Most people don't even get to that point, right?
Yeah.
And you've been doing all this cool stuff. I mean, so I want to walk through like, obviously the real estate part, like that's, I think a lot of folks listening, we talked about it, a lot of busy entrepreneurs, small business owners, professionals, and sometimes you're just not getting everything out of your business, but you want to do some cool stuff on the side to increase what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, whatever you're getting out of your business, even if it's not your business, even if it's just a job, we always want to be putting as much of our additional capital and any extra time we have towards real estate, in my opinion.
I want to hear your opinion, man. I want to hear your story and like how you found real estate at a young age and the path. Because I think a lot of people I don't know if it's like a daunting kind of thing. Like I own my house and I've done some small stuff, but I haven't scaled. So I'm super curious of like what got you to that point, and then I want to dive in a little bit.
Yeah, so I was doing door-to-door sales. I knocked on people's houses and tried to sell them 1-year pest control subscriptions. And I actually did it for a total of like 7.5 years. So I did it for a long time. And I started doing it during college. I was doing that during the summer, go do 8 months of college, and when I finished the semester, go back out for the summer again. And after a couple summers of that, I'm like, man, I was actually making more money doing summer sales, knocking on people's doors, selling pest control in 4 months than I would have if I were to like graduate and get a job in my field. And so I'm like, man, I can work for 4 months and like have a little bit of flexibility for 8 months, or I can work for 12 months and make a little bit less money. I think I'd rather keep grinding on the door. It's a grind, but I think the benefits outweigh the cons. And so I was doing that for, I guess it had been like 4 years at the time. And I was kind of at the spot, I was engaged to a girl. I was getting married that fall. And it was kind of like, man, when I was single, I was like, yeah, I could knock doors forever. I go with all my buddies. It's just a bunch of bros hanging out. We knock doors during the day, hang out at nights, hang out on the weekends. It was really fun. But, thinking about like getting married and starting a family, I'm like, and I also traveled every summer for this. So I lived in Utah, and I'd go to, California or to St. Louis, Missouri, or Kansas City or North Carolina. We just went to lots of different places. I'm like, man, that actually sounds pretty terrible, like with kids and a family and uprooting the whole family regularly to go out for 4 months of the year. And so I was trying to I was just thinking through my future. I'm like, you know what? Like, I can see myself doing this for a little bit longer, but I don't think I want to do this forever. Like if I have kids that are like in school and making friends in school, like I cannot picture myself doing the same type of job in that later family situation. And so I was just kind of, I wasn't like urgent, I was still a few years down the road before I felt like I'd like need to find something different. But I was also kind of at a spot where I was like, well, if I stop doing sales, I was making a couple $100,000 a year, or in the 4-month summer. And I guess I did have to recruit and build my team in the off season. So it's like, it was year round, but it was really a grind during the 4-month summer. And so like, if I go to do anything else, I will take a huge pay cut and I'll be working 12 months out of the year, and I'll have a boss and I'll have to ask for vacation days off. And like, I don't just like do my own thing and run my own schedule. And there's a lot of freedom that I had from the job that I had. And I was like, man, that would also be really crappy. Like, I don't want to sell forever, but I don't want to have to go get a normal job. And so I was kind of like at this dilemma, and I didn't really know what the answer was. I was just aware that I like was at this crossroads of something's going to have to be different in the future. I just don't know what.
That awareness is good though at that age too, and right where you're at, that crossroads.
Yeah. And I think that's important, is to be aware of issues, but also not freak out about them, right? I think I was seeing these things, but I was like, well, at least for the next little while, I can just keep on grinding. And I just figured I'd figure it out. And even I did, it all worked out great. But, I think that's an important principle for life, is if you're feeling stuck and feeling overwhelmed, just keep going, just keep on trucking. And, problems always solve themselves over time. So
they do. Couple things that I thought were like super stand out right there is the fact that, you did this for like so many years. You said something like 7 years. So, I mean, like you got the chops, and then traveling. I'm just thinking already where this might go, because it's the first time hearing your story. I'm like, with real estate, traveling, I mean, you're seeing all these different markets, and you're starting to see different neighborhoods, and you're probably looking at. So I'm just observing here, but continue on, man. I like it.
We'll keep on going. I actually, all my properties that I own are, within a couple hours of where I live, but
Okay.
it totally is nice to have been to different markets and, be aware of pros and cons of different markets and what things are like over there, just as a general real estate investor principle. But I guess how I got, I guess my transition to kind of figuring out what I'm doing with my life, or figuring out the solution for that problem, I got an unexpected call from one of my old college buddies. His name was Braden, and he called me and he's like, Dallas, what are you doing with all your sales money? Because he knew I was making good money doing sales. And I was like, well, I've got, my 401k, it is a solo 401k, I've got my IRA, I've got these other investments, and, I'm just doing like the typical put money into stocks and mutual funds using tax advantage strategies where I can. He's like, well, that's pretty cool. Have you ever thought about investing in real estate? And I was like, well, no, not really. I didn't know any real estate investors. I had heard horror stories of being a landlord, and having bad tenants, and I didn't have any specific stories in mind, but like, yeah, that sounds terrible. Being a landlord, that does not sound like that'd be my cup of tea. Well, he's like, well, and I also knew he was a real estate agent. So I know that he's like, obviously has incentive to sell me a property, get his real estate commission.
Right.
And so I was like a little bit just like kind of dismissed it. I don't think I'm interested. But he's like, well, before you say no, you should at least meet my father-in-law, Dave. Dave's a successful real estate investor, and it's like been the best thing for him. You should at least hear his story and hear what it's all about. And so I went down to Provo, Utah. It's about, 20 minutes from where I lived at the time. And I had lunch at Dave's house in his kitchen, just eating a sandwich. And Dave just told me his story. He's like, he worked as a firefighter, and in his late 30s, he started investing in real estate, had a buddy show him how to do what he was doing, bought a rental property, caught the vision, and just like went all in, and within a handful of years, built up his rental portfolio. And now in his, late 40s, he was living a really cushy life and living the dream. And so I kind of heard his story. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's cool. Like I didn't previously know real estate investors, and I didn't know what that looked like or how successful it could be. And so I kind of like caught the vision, and all of a sudden I went from like, nah, I don't want to do that, to like, I think this is exactly what I want to do.
Yeah, man. I mean, that's where, the thing that stood out there for me is you got a guy in his late 30s who started, and you said in his 40s, it was already feeling pretty cushy with the whole landlording thing, owning properties. So that timeline right there, I was going to expect like, oh, the guy's 70 something now, and he's spent a long time doing this, but no, like that's 10 years ish. And
yeah,
kind of reflects to what you've done.
He might have been in his early 50s. I give him the benefit of the doubt. I didn't ask
Gotcha.
his age. I don't know his age, but
Fair.
I do know he started in his late 30s, and he's not an old guy. He's like he's a dad of his oldest girl was in college. So however old that would make somebody, maybe low 50s. I don't know.
That's all good though. No, I mean, it's great because I think that time horizon, I'm just putting myself in those shoes for one. I'm late 30s, but also just for anyone listening, I know the demographics kind of similar, 40s, 50s as well. So it's not too late. It's basically like what I want to put out there too.
And I mean, the earlier the better, but starting, now is better than is the next best time, right?
Yeah. So what happened after that point?
Yeah, so I told Braden after that, I was like, all right, Braden, I'm interested. Like, go find me a property. He's a real estate agent. That's what he does. Go find me a property. Let's see what you got. And, now I find my own properties. But at the time, I was like, he went out and found a good property. And he's like, hey, I think this is a good one. And he had done a pro forma running all the numbers. And I was like, okay, yeah. But like, he's got his, he's a salesperson. I didn't really trust his pro forma. And, that was one thing Dave told me when I had lunch. He's like, if you're going to do it, like, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions you have and look over any properties with you and, help you be a landlord for the first time. Like, just let me know. And so I called Dave back. I'm like, hey, Dave, I've got this property. Braden thinks it's awesome, but I just wanted to get your opinion on it. So I sent it over to him. He looked at the numbers. He's like, yeah, this looks like a pretty good property. I think this would be a good win for you. And so I was like, I told Braden, I'm like, all right, I don't know what I was doing, but I trusted my mentor. He became my mentor, unofficial mentor, right? I trusted him and he said it seemed like a good deal. And so I was like, all right, let's go for it. I kind of felt like I just had to take a leap of faith, and I don't know what I'm doing, but they did and had to give it a shot. Yeah. So I was feeling pretty good about it. Like the numbers looked good. It seemed like it was going to provide a really good rate of return for me. We went to look at the property in person. We got it under contract and we went to go do our inspection. And when we were walking through the property, turns out this property was like in super bad condition. Specifically, one unit had like holes in the walls, holes in the doors, nasty stuff dripping down the walls, super unclean kitchen, and it was vacant. They had just finished an eviction. And it's just, and then even the outside was like some siding was coming off, missing shingles on the roof, bikes and junk in the front yard, and just like the parking lot was like crumbly asphalt, potholes and stuff. I'm like, man, this, and I grew up in a nice neighborhood. I grew up with the middle class or just slightly above middle class family. And I was like, man, I haven't really even seen properties like this before. And even knocking doors, we kind of stay away from low income areas. And so I was a little bit hesitant. I actually was like, I went from like being super excited to like totally fearful.
Well, it's a whole new thing.
Yeah. I'm like, I don't think this is for me. I don't think I'm cut out for this. Like all those horror stories, and I haven't heard very many, but like the, whispers of landlord horror stories, bad tenants, toilets, repairs, like that is exactly what this looks like, is just headaches. And so I was like pretty nervous, and I was like, my wife was with me. She went and saw it, and she was also nervous. She's like, I don't think we should do it. So I was like, well, let me call Dave and like see what he thinks. And so I called Dave. I'm like, Dave, we went and saw the property, and it was like super bad. He's like, well, what'd you see? He's like, oh, holes in the doors, holes in the walls, this. I was like, okay, anything else? I was like, no, just like that stuff. He's like, Dallas, when we buy a rental property, we're not buying it because it's cute. We're not buying it because we want to live there ourselves. We're not buying it because we like to look at it. We buy a rental property because of the numbers. And we ran the numbers, and the numbers look like it works. And so even if we do budget to fix these things, the numbers still work. And so if the numbers work, we should proceed. So, it's obviously your decision, but I think that you should do it, is basically what he said. Yeah. And so I was at this spot where I'm like, everything inside of me was saying, no, run, this is a bad idea. But my mentor and my real estate agent, who I felt like was, he was a friend of mine, but I understood that he was incentivized to sell a property. But he was saying yes, and my mentor says, yeah, you should do it. And so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go for it. Worst case scenario, I had invested like $80,000 into the property. I'm like, worst case scenario, I lose my 80 grand. I have a terrible experience. I could move on from that. I mean, it'd not be fun. That was all of my savings at the time. But I was like, life would go on. I wouldn't be like dead, And so I just took a leap of faith and did it, as scary as it was. And it took me about 3 months to be like, oh my gosh, this was actually the best financial decision I've ever made.
Wow. So, I mean, that's such a common thing, I'm sure, like when newbies getting into real estate, because that's probably what I would feel like too, getting in, seeing a property and be like, oh my God, that's going to be so much work. Or like, what do I not know here? What are behind the walls and things that are going to cost way more? But like you said, if you have a mentor, someone who's done a lot of these, seen the things, the common issues, and you know the numbers, that's the key thing. It's an investment, right? Like it's
Yeah.
all comes down to numbers. And yeah, I guess the numbers thing, I'd love to go a little deeper on that, like the things to look at or look for, but also like what was your next steps to repairing this thing? Was it like, is it budgeted in that you're having someone else do this? Are you doing it? Like,
Great question. So, as far as running numbers, that's a huge topic. That'd be an hour-long
for
conversation.
sure.
But just for somebody who wants a quick tip, there's a website called dealcheck.io, and it's the best software for running numbers. Now, you have to know like what to put in all the fields and how to use it, but it's really cool because it'll import properties from Zillow. You type in the address, it pulls in data from Zillow, and it pulls in a lot of the like estimated rents, estimated property taxes, estimated insurance, and you have to kind of fine tune your expenses and the loan product that you're using and things like that. But if you know what you're doing enough to run numbers, it's by far the best property analysis tool out there, and it's
Sweet.
free. Like you can have like 10 saved properties at a time for free. So if you're just like, yeah, I'll just delete the ones I didn't want, and put in new ones, and it's free forever.
Cool. So like no barrier to at least try. Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess the only other thing I'll say with the analysis is just recognize that the analysis is just a projection. So if the analysis looks, all we're looking for is that, in a moderate or even conservative situation, that the returns from this property would at least be tolerable, right? So we're not looking, and the better it looks, the better, right? If we find a slam dunk deal, then great. But I'm just looking to say, hey, if I'm doing a moderate analysis, I'm not being super aggressive. Is this at least tolerable? Like, would I be okay with getting this kind of rate of return? And if I am, then that's great, because when you buy the property, whatever you buy, whatever the analysis said, we're always going to do our very best to get it to perform as well as we can, as much rents as we can, little as expenses as we can. And in my experience, I outperform my analysis by quite a bit, like probably 30% better cash flow than, maybe not, 20 to 30% better cash flow than my projections said. And so if we use our analysis to just make a logical decision that this property is at least tolerable, and then we're going to do our best to maximize it once we have it, then we're going to be happy with it. So
Beautiful. No, it's great setup, man. And thanks. And yeah, go check that out, everyone. I want to go poke at that too, see some numbers. And I'm sure there's some other, these tools, I'm sure with AI too. I know I've heard there's some pretty wild things you can do to analyze properties, but that's probably a whole nother rabbit hole.
yeah. There's a lot to it, but
for sure.
Anyway,
well, let's go back to because the common thing when you see a fixer upper or something like this is like, how the heck am I going to do the work, or who's going to do the work? And I don't know the costs on that. So what was your approach there?
So that was something I did wrong. There's a lot of things I did wrong. I had a mentor and his system worked, but he was old school, right? He wasn't using modern technologies and tools and systems. And so he was like, I own properties all around my house. And he was the repair guy. He was retired, right, from his rentals, but he also would go and do all of his own repairs. And so I was like, okay, I'm just going to do what my mentor does. And this unit that was in disarray, I went up and spent like 3 days. My wife and I went up. She came up with me for a day. We cleaned it. I actually got a buddy and his wife too. We went up and cleaned everything. And then we had to, repaint it, patch some walls. And I had done pretty well. And then I got to the spot where I was replacing doors. And I was like, I bought some doors. I bought a router with like a little template to cut out the hinges on the doors. And it just I could not get it. I tried on 2 different doors. I ruined the doors that I bought from Lowe's. Luckily, Lowe's took them back as returns and gave me my money back.
I've done that before. It's tough.
And so I had spent like 3 days up here doing just like grinding stuff. And so I ended up calling, I have a buddy that was like, me and my brother are starting a construction business. He's a contractor, and we're going to build a business together. So I called him like, hey, does your brother do doors? Like, could he help hang some doors for me? He's like, oh yeah, for sure. So he went up there, spent like 3 hours and had all the doors hung. I'm like, dude. And I feel like that kind of started to open my mind to like, man, I'm not that handy. I can do little stuff. I could unclog a sink, I can paint a wall, but I didn't want to do that with my time. My time was pretty valuable with, my career. And so I feel way better off just hiring it out. So now I hire out everything. I own properties, even properties that are like 20 minutes away from where I live. I haven't been there since I bought them.
Cool.
I manage 100% remotely, hire it all out. But
I'm a big fan of that. I mean, it's all about that goes with any part of your life. It's like you have time and energy, and it's like how you feeling with those. Like, is your time is worth something? Obviously, we all have our own number, and then it's like, is that energy you want to put out towards that task or that thing, or is it like making you kind of repel from it and frustrating you and all that stuff? Some people just love that, and
Yeah,
that's all good.
yeah. And if that's like a Zen spot for you, then great, go for it. But for me, it's
Yeah,
not. It's
yeah, for sure.
frustrating.
No shame, So cool. So you did this deal, and so it seemed to have worked out. This one. So what? Like, yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
repaired.
I was getting after the investment, I was getting about $1,000 a month of cash flow, and I'm like,
Wow.
oh shoot,
Yeah.
1,000. It is a 4 unit building, it was a fourplex,
Okay.
so I was getting 250 per month per unit in cash flow, um, and for me, like that, just that monthly cash flow, I'm like, oh my gosh, I live off, at the time I was living off like $5,000 a year, like
Hmm.
it was just me and my wife living in a 1 bedroom apartment, and we're not spenders. I was driving an old beat up 2014 Jetta and
Cool.
happy with that.
Yeah.
Uh, anyway, so I was like, man, if I could just have a few more of these, I could like be financially free. Like I wouldn't have to work. I wouldn't be living my dream life, but I would like at least have my necessities covered. And so like that for me, I just caught the vision. I was like, man, $1,000 a month from this. I made this purchase once, and then having talked with my mentor, he's like, and that's the properties performs at its very worst during year one, because what happens is rents go up over time, and it gets your mortgage stays pretty much the same, but as rents go up with inflation, you get more and more cash flow as time goes on. It's like,
Hmm.
man, if I can get it, it's this good already. I just need a few more of these. And so what happened for me is I stayed living frugal. Even though I was like $1,000 a month, that could be a car payment for a really cool car. I could go blow that money, but
Yeah.
I kept living frugal, and I saved that money up. Plus, I actually felt like more motivated at my job now. I was a commission-based salesman. I'm like, man, if I could like work harder, get more sales, and make more money at work, then I could invest more money into real estate faster and just scale this thing quicker. And so
Yeah.
I just doubled down everywhere, and it took me about one more year to be able to buy my next rental property. And then it took me about one more year to buy my next one. But once I had three properties, I had, three properties that were producing a little over $1,000 per month each. So I had, probably $3,500 a month of cash flow. Combining that with my job, I was able to scale a lot faster. So I bought two properties the next year. I bought three properties the next year, and it got easier and easier to scale. For me, by the time I had 5 fourplexes, so it took me, I bought a property, and it was 1 year, 2 year. After about 3 years, when I bought 2 fourplexes in the same year, I had that fifth one, and I was like, shoot, I'll be cash flowing like, $6,500 a month. Maybe, I don't remember the exact number, but it was my initial goal was 6,000. Like if I could have $6,000 a month, I would quit my job. And
Yeah.
I was like, I reached it. And, that year, like with the year that I bought that fifth fourplex, after, giving it a year at a time, I cash flowed over $100,000 that year. But it was
Wow.
at that fifth one, I was kind of running the numbers, projecting forward. I'm like, I could quit my job. So I did. I was like, I'm done. I stopped knocking doors, quit my sales job, and just kept rolling out my real estate career.
I love it, man. I mean, it's like I'm hearing two things. There's consistency. It's like for one in the sales job, you're doing that what 7.5 years, I think you said, and that was obviously funding the bigger vision that you had, and you were seeing the vision as it was developing. You're like, okay, this compounds, like literally
Yeah.
compounds in effort, or not even in effort, just in results and returns. And then the fact that you hammered down, like you saw the vision. So like you had 3 years of consistency, but it wasn't just like sitting back, chilling or blowing the cash. It was, you're actually, no, you're going to keep compounding your investment and focus into this consistent path, which I don't think most people do. They might just get one or a couple here and there, but you went all in, but all in on both sides, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and the model that I followed is very much like, hey, I make really good money with my job. Like
Mhm.
my time is best spent working in my sales job because I was good at it. It was a commission-based job. The more energy I put, the more money I could make from it. So I had a really good gig over there. There are people where it's like, hey, I don't make great money at my job, or I'm not in a scalable income job, and that's fine too. Maybe there are ways to do. I could have been like investing more time and energy into real estate and scaling it by partnering with people or finding undervalued deals that I can invest energy into repair and scale a little bit quicker that way instead. But either way, it's doubling down, right? Whether we want to double down at our business and say, hey, I make great money, I'm just going to be an investor and invest my extra cash into more real estate and retire that way. Or I don't make great money, I'm going to invest my time and energy into real estate activities and get creative, use partners, try to negotiate deals with sellers, and if I buy distressed property that need repairs. But you got to double down. If you want to go fast, you got to double down somewhere. So
yeah, there you go, man. And I think it's a great motto for whatever you do, but here where it can be exponential growth with your efforts, really not one time, but at least like setting it up for that property. Big announcement here. The Hustle and Flowchart podcast is now the newest podcast on the HubSpot podcast network. They're the audio destination for business professionals. It's exactly why I joined the network, to expand what we've been doing here, making business the fuel for your life, not the stressor or the burnout. We want to build fun and make business a big part of who we are and our expression out to others. So you're going to expect a lot more curated guests and that sync up with this mission. Also more topics and episodes from me. And I want you to keep listening to the Hustle and Flowchart podcast. Go check out other shows on the HubSpot podcast network at hubspot.com/podcast network. Hey, I want to tell you about an all-in-one marketing platform that's been a game changer for a bunch of businesses. It's called Kartra, and it's the all-in-one tool that you need to grow. So the point is, you don't need to pay for a whole bunch of different subscriptions because Kartra does it all. So what makes Kartra different is that you can automate everything. Everything from delivering your online courses, sending targeted emails, selling products, and even handling your customer support. So all in all, it's saving you time and a bunch of money. And right now, you can try it out for 30 days. Just head over to hustleandflowchart.com/Kartra and go get that free trial. Again, that is hustleandflowchart.com/KARTRA. Now tell me about the team. Like what goes into a property? Obviously you now have multiple and maybe luckily, not luckily, I don't know, but like the region. So I'm thinking like regional, how do you deal with that? Like, what are your thoughts on location and then team?
for me, like each county that I have properties in, I need a different team. My team consists of a handyman. That's my probably most important team member, a cleaner, carpet cleaner, like people that you need for turnovers and repairs. And then I just recently hired like management assistant who helps me just kind of like deal with texting tenants and deal with turnovers and listing units and things like that.
So not a full-blown manager, but an assistant, more or less.
I self-manage everything, but my self-managing is just like relying on people to do it. I just kind of coordinate stuff, right? And
you're more like a CEO of that.
I'm the CEO of my real estate portfolio. I make decisions, and I think the only thing that I still do that's like, okay, this, and I'm hoping that my new assistant will eventually take this over, but she lists the units, gets applications. I still am like, I want to be the one to pick my tenants, because picking the wrong tenant could be huge nightmares. And I'm like, I've got 32 units right now, and that means I probably have, I don't know, maybe on average a little more than one turnover per month. I feel like it ends up coming in like batches though. It's like, one month I'll have like 3 turnovers, and then I don't have any for a couple months. But it takes me maybe an hour to review an application, and I still do that. I'm like, I do want to be the person to pick my tenant. So that's what I still do. That's like, I feel kind of like I'm in the weeds on that section, but my bookkeeping, all the stuff that's a little more just routine and mundane, I hire somebody else to do that for me. So my management model is basically, once I have a tenant in there, they pay rent online. If they go late, there's automatic late fees that get posted. If they're still late, my assistant will message them and say, hey, rent's due. Try to maybe work a deal on cutting their late fees in half. They can pay by Friday or something like that. So she kind of manages that. And then anytime there's a repair, my tenant texts in on our, like I use a Google Voice number. So they text in on our Google Voice number, and either me or my assistant will do a group chat with my handyman and the tenant and say, hey, Mr. Handyman, this tenant and this address is having this issue. Can you go take care of it? They'll schedule it with the tenant. They get the job done, send me a bill, and then we just write them a check and pay them. And so like my job's done there. And then if I have a turnover, then we list it, get somebody in. And I mean, it's pretty simple. Like self-managing is way more lucrative, not only because of saving management fees, but no one cares more about your units than you do. So you'll get higher rents, you'll keep your expenses lower. And if you do it the right way, it's all digital from your computer and pretty minimal time commitment.
Dude, I love it. Like, for some reason, I haven't heard this kind of model. It's always like either you're doing everything yourself, or you're farming out what 20% to a property management company or something like that,
Yeah,
20 to
I
30.
mean, for that, no, that, if you're doing short-term rentals, that'd be more accurate. For long-term rentals, you'll find management companies that'll do 8 to 10%, but they're
Okay.
also frequently charging like 50% of the first month's rent when they sign a new contract, a new lease. And then they're also usually upcharging on any repairs that are needing to be done. And so that means they're like not incentivized to keep your expenses low. If anything, it's like, oh yeah, the more repairs, the more, that's extra income by
Oh yeah,
charging extra for all the repairs that we do. So I
makes
bought
sense.
properties before that were like one property specifically, this lady was owning it and she's like, man, I just don't make any money from this thing. And when I bought it, the property manager is being professionally managed. They were charging like $750 a month for rent. When I bought it, I raised rent to like $1,200. So huge
Nice.
jumps in rents. Everybody moved out, but I was able to fill it because that was market rent. Is people were
Yep.
willing to pay that. And like I had looked at their operating statement, and she was just getting like tons of repairs all over the place. And it's my nicest building that I own. It was built in 1991, and I might have repairs here and there, but it's probably my least repair building. And so just like she had a bad manager, that was a bad property manager. But I think that in general, property managers aren't going to, no one's going to care for it the same way that you will. So when
Not
at
at
least
all.
when you're growing your business, until you're like, man, I'm so busy that I just don't have time for this. Or like, I'm kind of at this spot now where it's like, man, if I pick up another property, I don't really value the extra cash flow. Like I already make way more money in cash flow than I spend each year. So like, it doesn't improve my lifestyle, but it will hurt my lifestyle because I've just got more to deal with. At
What
some
to
point,
do?
you'll get to a
Yeah.
spot where it's like, okay, it is finally worth passing these off. And my strategy is going to be more of trying to hire somebody to replace me rather than
Yep.
hiring a property manager, like hire an internal assistant.
Yeah.
But anyway, eventually we'll get to that point. But I'm a big believer in self-managing, especially starting.
I think it's a great concept, man. And it's something that I think a lot of business owners, people listening right now can relate to. I'm sure a lot of us listening have assistants or someone on our team that we just know handles a lot of the admin work. It's like, well, there's a lot of that here too. Even if it's a physical space, it gets you out of the doing of a lot of that coordination, which I'm sure sucks up most of the time. You know?
Yeah, well, and I think my job gets boiled down to like I always tell my students, if you for every unit that you own, plan on spending like 30 minutes per month per unit. But I feel like that goes down like as you scale, right? You get the benefit of the masses, and so like I've got 32 rental units, and it probably takes me about 10 hours a month, and I work on them about maybe once or twice a month for a few hours at a time. And I kind
Nice.
of look through my reports and try to find inefficiencies, or maybe I'm doing some screenings for a turnover, and maybe I have to coordinate stuff for like random text messages here and there, but it's pretty minimal
Cool.
effort. And yeah, my 32 units right now, they're bringing in like $280,000 a year in cash flow. So it's like, I'm okay investing 10 hours a month for, $22,000 a month of cash flow.
It's pretty solid, man. Yeah, and I think that's something that everyone, I mean, doesn't matter where you're living, that's going to be helpful, and it's something that's totally doable. It sounds like with, something that we already existing, like a business or a professional gig that we have. I'm kind of curious of your thoughts on the current market conditions. Like, obviously, interest rates are higher. Locations, I don't know exactly what you have in mind there, but like, what are your thoughts generally for someone who is starting out, new to all this?
So, it's still a great time to buy. It's a little bit different now. So some markets that we used to really like have now been kind of priced out. So for example, I live in Utah. All of my properties are in Utah. For a lot of people, that's become priced out because the prices have already gotten high. It's a fast growing area, lots of people moving in, which means it's a great place to own long term. We're going to get a lot of appreciation, lots of rent growth, but it makes the entrance prices pretty high. And then that was already kind of hard to swallow. But then with higher interest rates happening now it's like really hard to swallow. And it actually makes it very difficult to find positive cash flowing properties that cash flow day one with an 8% interest mortgage rate, right? So
Tough.
there's some markets that were like, yeah, you used to be like, oh, these are great markets. We love these because they're growing so fast. Some of the really fast growing stuff are like, hey, this is still a great market, but we're going to have to look through 50 bad deals to find one good deal. And then if we find it, doesn't mean we'll get it. We're going to have to like compete with other buyers that are also trying to win that really good deal. So it became difficult in some markets that are growing fast. So our recommended markets have shifted to more like moderately growing markets or more stable markets that are lower priced. And the cash flow that we look at starting out is not quite as sexy. We're looking at yes, a little lower rates of return on cash flow, but the future outlook is really good. So what's happening is with the higher interest rates, it is putting downward pressure on purchase prices. And so we are able to get better deals, and the market's slowing down. So like before it was like, oh, this property is listed for $400,000. If I even want a chance at it, I've got to offer $440, what is listed for wasn't what it was selling for. And now it's starting to slow down in the opposite direction where they're listed. If we see a property listed for more than 30 days and we say, hey, we are going to be asking for a discount up front. So it's listed for 400. Now we can maybe get it for 385 or 390, right? And so we get a little more negotiation. So we actually are able to lock in better deals right now than we were a year ago or 2 years ago. But the cash flow is not as great because the interest rates are so high. But what's exciting is if we can have a property that does well and meets our cash flow requirements and meets our rates of return requirements with the high 8% interest rate, eventually, no one has a crystal ball, but fingers crossed, hopefully rates will drop again to where they're 5%, even a few percent off. And now all of a sudden we free up an extra few $100s of what was going towards interest on our mortgage. Now our property was performing okay before or decent before. Now it's performing great, right? And so it's still a great time to buy. It is harder. We do sift through more bad deals before we find the deals that we actually want to move forward on. But there's still lots of great properties out there. Our students are buying properties all the time. We just have to make sure we're getting the right ones.
Yeah. And it's almost like a sound of the longer time horizon. So kind of putting that out there, and then knowing and just being diligent, right? Using the tools like you mentioned before, and just being persistent and showing up and looking for those that might be lingering for a little longer, 30 days plus or whatever.
Yeah, and just knowing the tactics, right? It's all about, finding a good deal and turning a good deal into a great deal with negotiating. That's a huge part of our strategy. And knowing the right negotiation tactics and having the right teams. Like part of what we offer is we connect our students with team members in their areas, so like a real estate agent, a lender, and inspectors and things like that. And so when they find the right property, they're going to have experts that are able to negotiate strongly for them and turn a good deal into a great deal.
Yeah. Well, you bring up a point, because the other part of, we were talking this podcast is kind of like a twofer. There's a lot of people who want to, they're curious about the real estate stuff. And obviously now with financial world, we want to diversify. I think it's always smart to do that anyway, but why not something that is a lot more long-term in real estate? I'm doing the same here locally in San Diego. And luckily I have some property here, so I can kind of develop and move stuff around in a hot place, obviously. Very expensive. Yeah. So, but to your point, now you've reached a point of 30 plus 35 properties, I think you said. And
32 rental units.
32. Yeah. And now you're coaching. So you've obviously you don't need to keep scaling that. You're also educating on all this stuff, and the fact you've also grown a coaching business really large, really quickly. And I know a lot of people listening are coaches as well, or they have some kind of coaching element in their business. So I'm curious of, I guess, two things here. It's tell me about the real estate coaching. So if people, obviously you gave a ton of info already, and if they want to jump in with you, I definitely want to give them that avenue to go with you. And then I want to talk about the coaching business itself, the model and everything.
Yeah. So, our business is called the Landlord Academy. So just go to thelandlordacademy.com. We've got a free training. It's like a 20-minute training. You can learn from me. I'll give you all my best tips, just kind of in a short, sweet, concise video. If you like it, book a call with my team. They'll chat with you about the different programs that we have for coaching and different price points. And we've got financing options available. So depending on your budget, we've guaranteed to have a program that would fit your budget and be able to help you get started quickly. So
sweet. Yeah, man.
As far as growing the coaching business goes, it's been a wild ride. I've been doing it for about 2 years now, and I guess 2.5 years now. And initially I started it where I was kind of in limbo after I quit my sales job. I'm like, what am I doing with my time now? I picked up a ton of hobbies, and I was trying to just play, and I played a lot, but it's you can only play so much before it's just not fun, especially when all my other friends were still working jobs and busy. And so I didn't have people to share hobbies with. So yeah, I was like, maybe I'll go get my real estate license. And the more I looked into that, I didn't really like how I was like, well, I have to like market myself and post on social media all the time. And like, maybe I'll go get my, become a financial advisor and help coach people through like making personal finance investments and stuff. And then I was like, man, that's also like a sales job. And I was like, I'd done sales for so long. I kind of don't want to do sales. And I had people ask me all the time, dude, I need to pick your brain about real estate. And in this time, I'd already joined lots of other real estate coaching courses and programs. And I signed up for another one. And every program I bought are like super like long drawn out videos where it's either like recorded Zoom calls, like watching videos like this to like learn about real estate, which is, these are great, but it's a lot of long form video to get the, nuggets that you need.
The thing you're looking for. Yeah.
Yeah. Or other ones that did have shorter videos. They were just like not very well planned out and like not specific enough. And I'm like, man, I could do like, and I have joined some other courses on other topics that were phenomenal and like amazing. I'm like, man, I could do a real estate course way better than any of these other ones that I've bought and spent thousands of dollars on. And so I was like, I'm just going to start doing it. I'll start doing it. I was like, I don't know if I'm going to do a YouTube channel or make a course. And so I just started making some videos. I made like 12 or 15 videos and I did like a pre-sale. So I was like, I texted a bunch of friends and posted on Facebook like, hey, just kind of put some feelers out to see if there's interest. And I got like 67 people that bought my pre-launch with just a handful of videos. I was like, oh, that's cool. And it was only like a third of the people I knew. And then like 2/3 of people that like I didn't know that like had, I was like, share it with a friend. I asked some buddies to post on their Facebook to, share the word or whatever. And so I was like, okay, this is pretty cool. So I just spent the next year like continuing to build it. I had another buddy that had a personal finance course. And he's like, dude, all of my students are asking about real estate, but I'm not a real estate investor. And so he's like, could I sell my course to your course to my students? I was like, yeah, just give them this promo code. He's like, no. That's not how we do it. Like, I will sell them. I'm going to do sales calls with them and sell your program. And he's really like, he's a salesperson and really good at like he's like, I'll help you find out the price point. Like, he's like, you're not charging nearly enough for your course already. And I want to get an affiliate commission, so he like helped me kind of figure out my model of like, oh, what should I be charging and what should I include and what can I include to make it worth way more and make it so people are willing to pay way more. And so he started selling my program for me and like blew my mind. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is nuts. Like in my, I'd been in business for about a year at the time and he did more sales in like 2 weeks than I had done in my whole year. And with a lot less clients, because he was just charging the right amount for the value that we're giving. And he helped me change my model and helped me give me some ideas to add more value to students. And it just kind of morphed. And I really picked up. I found a really good sales guy. So I was running ads on Facebook, kind of following the model that my friend taught me. I was running ads and I hopped on a sales call with a guy. He's like, wait, you're Dallas? Are you the one that I saw in the ads? I'm like, yeah, I'm the guy in the ads. He's like, why are you doing your own sales calls? I'm like, I don't know. I'm just starting up. He's like, you don't have a sales team? He's like, I'm like, no, we're just kind of new. He's like, dude, I need to I'll help you build a sales team. And we kind of worked out an agreement where it's like, look, if I can help you build a sales team, you'll get, free his membership for free. And he's like, and I'd like to have an opportunity to be like an equity partner. I think he just kind of saw an opportunity of like, this is cool. He's doing good stuff. And he obviously doesn't have his systems built up. And so we kind of set some goals. It's like, hey, if we reach these goals, then we'll be, I'd be more than happy to have you be an equity partner. I wouldn't have done that alone. I know that for sure.
Right.
And so I brought this sales guy on and he just crushed it. He's like a phenomenal salesperson. And we just like, took it to the moon. And it's just been a wild ride since then. But
dude, I love it. Yeah. It's like, I'm hearing like systems obviously is like everything, it's even the real estate stuff that we were just talking about, but then also, sales guy or salesperson in general, whoever's talking about like, you have that knowledge. So now you can pass down obviously what you already know. They're coming with their skill set. Then the third thing is like, now you're leveraging someone else's audience to send warm leads or, warm prospects your way. And they're even doing the selling or at least like doing the pre-selling part of it all. I mean, pretty damn killer. Like that's a solid model right there. Yeah.
And I got lucky. I kind of just had a lot of people reach out at the right time. Like my buddy Dan that was doing the personal finance course, he called me. He's like, hey, I saw you do a real estate course. My students are interested in real estate. Like, I wonder if there's so I got lucky and that was a huge turning point. And then this guy like clicking on my Facebook ad, and I was trying to do a sales call with him, and him eventually becoming my business partner that, took our business. So like, I think there's, I think I found with entrepreneurship and business, and this happened with a lot of spots in my life, is if we're like putting our head down and doing the right things and grinding ourselves, opportunities come, and we just need to recognize them, right? Be open-minded to opportunities. And both of these things, I could have been like, no, I'm going to do things my way and like miss these amazing opportunities. But I was open-minded to, sure, let's try it out, see what happens, and it ends up working out. Sometimes it doesn't, but you got to always be open-minded.
I mean, the fact that, and you said lucky, and yeah, there's some luck, but the fact that you were putting yourself out there, like the fact that you were even putting an offer out there in the first place, but then selling or, running Facebook ads, like most people won't even get to that step. And maybe a lot of people are hesitant, but it's like, boom, you did it.
I mean, you can say, there's luck. Everybody's going to get lucky though. Luck is more of a numbers thing, right? Like the only reason I got lucky that Dan reached out to me is because I had made videos and been posting on my social media,
Bingo.
And so I got lucky because Dan reached out to me. And the only reason I met this other guy is because I had been running ads and doing sales calls and grinding. And I got lucky that the right guy, so I think that if you're doing the right things, luck will always come your way. It's just a numbers game, but you have to be open. You have to be willing to recognize the opportunities, right? So I think it's just putting in the effort and being open-minded.
Dude, I love it. And Dallas, man, this thing is like packed with so many gems, and from both on the real estate side, coaching side. I'm curious, where are things headed now for you, like on both sides of the business? Or do you have, obviously you're a family guy too, so that's a focus. But where do you see things going for, I guess, those businesses? And any last thoughts on before we wrap this puppy up?
Yeah, I mean, so we're for real estate. My next purchase is going to be something really large, and I probably will just either, if my internal manager is really doing well, maybe I'll have her do it. I feel like if we pick up a bunch of units at once, I'd be pretty tempted to just like hire property managers. Say, hey, you do this professionally. At least get started that way. Yeah. But I'm at a spot now with my real estate that I don't want to buy any more units that I'm going to be in charge of, because the extra money doesn't help me, and the time of finding the deal and closing on and like getting it set up is going to be a pain. And so like if I do something, it'll be big. But most of my time right now is spent on my business. So I love growing my coaching business. We're trying to solve problems every day and trying to improve. And a lot of what I do now is adding contents, like figuring out what needs my students have, and some stuff I'm not an expert in. So for example, we had a lot of needs like, hey, I want to learn how to do like really creative deals. Like how do I negotiate with sellers for like seller financing terms and, get some
like multi-unit. I don't know if you do any of that kind of stuff too.
Yeah, I do. And how do we do, there's some stuff that I'm just not an expert in. And like, even like I've got some tax advice, but I've got people asking for like additional tax stuff. I'm like, I kind of know that. So I've actually been finding people that say, hey, you're good at this. And we're like contracting with them to like help us create modules to, add some value add content for our students. So that's really what I do now is I do our, growing our education, the content that we have, as well as just the systems as we continue to grow. There's a lot of technology systems that are required, and that's what I studied. Even though I never used my degree, I studied information systems in college. So I am very good with softwares and technologies and using them to automate a lot of the demands of, high ticket coaching businesses. Yeah. So.
Oh yeah. Well, now's the world to do our time to do it with all the AIs and all these crazy automations you can build custom to your business. I'm doing all sorts of stuff too with my team, and we're just like every day I'm like, oh my God, they're just like that just cut a whole, slew of time off. So good time to be alive there for that. And also shout out your podcast, because you just started that.
Just launched it by recommendation of Joe. Yeah, we just started our podcast. It's called the Landlord Academy Own Your Freedom Podcast. So we just launched our first episode today. After talking with Joe, I'm actually going to probably trim it up a little bit and repost it, a little cleaned up version. So I'm learning. We're brand new. I'm not a podcaster yet, but we're going to be sharing a lot of free nuggets and free advice. So go give it a follow.
Yeah, man. Hey, man, you're a podcaster now. You're in the deep end. You just threw yourself in there. So this is how
There you
luck
go. Yeah, just got
happens
to keep
again,
it
you
right.
know?
That's right. That's right. I'm sure if I keep on grinding, I'll get lucky eventually, find some good opportunities. So.
That's how it works. Well, dude, Dallas, I appreciate you so much. Happy we connected, made it happen. And thanks for being so open too. And definitely go check out the Landlord Academy if you're willing to dive in there or wanting to. At least check out the video and learn a little bit more from Dallas. So appreciate you, man. And I'll go check out that podcast too. Curious.
Oh, yeah. Thanks,
See
Joe.
ya.